Okay, so it looks like we're just about to 10:15, so I'll give a couple quick reminders and then we'll get started. Please do fill out the survey that's in the chat. I'll throw that in there again right now so you guys can make sure you have the link. We're going to take questions in the chat throughout the presentation, but I'm going to save them to the end. I'm just going to take some notes and we'll ask the questions at the end of the presenter, so feel free to throw them in there as questions come to your mind. And as we finish today, please do take advantage of those networking opportunities that are here virtually and visit the exhibitor hall where you can watch some videos and meet some of the exhibitors and sponsors. So thank you for being here to our presenters today. And I'm going to introduce Scott Powell, who's the director of the Bureau of Labor Market Information and Strategic Initiatives, one of the longer acronyms from our state leadership departments. And he's going to go ahead and introduce his team. So thank you, and we'll go ahead and kick it off.
Thanks, Holly. Yeah, I do think we have the longest one by far. I think we frequently trip over it ourselves. So, but yeah, as Holly said, I'm the director of the Bureau of Labor Market Information and Strategic Initiatives in the State Department of Technology Management and Budget. And with me today, I have two colleagues, Lilia Fernandez, who is our Associate Director of Research and Analytics, and also Nick Gandhi, who is an economic analyst in our bureau. So across the three of us, we're hoping to cover quite a bit of ground today in this workshop. Three main things we'll cover. So first of all, we'll kick things off with just a labor market update from me. I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what we've seen over the last year since we last saw everyone at this conference, what the labor market's been doing, where it's at right now, and in particular have a discussion about which groups have been affected the most since the pandemic began. Secondly, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lilia, and she's going to focus on in-demand jobs. So I know some of you may have attended our Outlook conference earlier this summer, but so we have a lot of new data to share there, as well as new products that Lilia is going to talk about. And then finally, we'll turn it over to Nick, who is going to talk about our new apprenticeship dashboard that we've developed in partnership with the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity Workforce Development Group. And so really big, great new tool there with our apprenticeship dashboard. Nick's going to review that. And then, as Holly said, we'll have time for questions at the end. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and just launch in to the material that I have. So give me 1 second here, and I'm going to share my screen. And okay, so as I mentioned, the first thing we're going to do today is just provide a little bit of an update on what the labor market is doing, what it's been doing over the last year, especially since the beginning of the pandemic. So first thing we'll jump into, no surprise, right, is the unemployment rate. So this is probably the first measure that we all think about when we think about the labor market, state's labor market, judging its health and its condition. And so we can see a few things from the chart in front of you. So the dark green line is the unemployment rate for the United States, and the light green line is the unemployment rate for Michigan. And this is going back to January of 2020, just prior to the pandemic. So you can see, if we go back that far, that we were at those historic lows, below 4% unemployment, really low. And then, of course, as COVID hit and it peaked in April of 2020, we saw a very large spike in unemployment. We can see that unemployment growth was much higher here in Michigan than it was in the country overall, hitting almost 24% unemployment. You can see that the gray bars, those are the unemployment insurance claims, and those followed suit along with everything else. But we also can see that, there was a quick drop off from that peak in April. So by the time we hit, about a year ago, we had come back down quite a bit, under 10% unemployment, and we were tracking pretty closely with the United States overall. And then we can see that since then, it's just kind of been a slow, steady decline in unemployment rate. And you can see that we are currently now, so this is for July is the most recent data we have for the state. We actually have new data coming out tomorrow. So it's 2 o'clock tomorrow if you're interested. You can look for that news to drop. But as of today, we can only talk about the July data. So the August stuff comes out tomorrow. We're below 5% unemployment. We're also below the unemployment rate for the country overall. Are we back to where we were prior to the pandemic, below 4%? Nope, not quite, but we are getting there. Right? So quite a recovery so far. However, the unemployment rate is not the only thing that we look at when we think about what's going on in the labor market and trying to get an assessment of how it's doing. We also want to think about the labor force itself. So the unemployment rate is based off those individuals that are looking for a job but can't find one. We know that one of the hallmarks of the last year or so, 18 months with this pandemic, has been that it's not just people looking for jobs can't find them, it's people dropping out of the labor force altogether. So what's that look like? What these two lines are showing you are an index to February of 2020, that month immediately prior to the pandemic starting. And so that 100 line is the one you want to watch for. That's when we'd be back to the pre-pandemic levels. You can see that our labor force levels dropped off quite a bit, again, at the peak of the pandemic in April of 2020. We came back up pretty sharply later in the summer, and then we were trending pretty close with the U.S. overall, even doing a little better than the U.S. overall until we hit the end of the year, beginning of this year. And then you can see another drop off in our labor force participation. Since then, our labor force levels came down, and we've been pretty steady since February of this year. But you can see that we're at about 96% of our labor force levels prior to the pandemic. In the U.S., it's closer to 98%. So again, we're doing better than we were at the peak of the pandemic, but we've still got some ways to go as far as labor force participation goes. Now that's kind of overall what's been going on in the labor market, but another hallmark of this pandemic has been that it is not affecting everyone equally. So we wanted to take a few minutes and discuss what are those groups that have been impacted, most disproportionately affected by the pandemic over the last 12 to 18 months. One of those groups, as I'm sure is no surprise to a lot of the folks tuning in right now, is women. Right? We've heard a lot about this, about how this pandemic has affected women more than it has men. This is especially the case if we look at labor force participation. So again, unemployment rate doesn't tell the full story. You've got to look at that in context with a number of other things. And if we look at where we're at with the unemployment rate, you can see that historically women do a bit better than men when it comes to unemployment rate, and we're back to that now. But when we look at labor force participation, we can see that since February of 2020, about 30,000 men have dropped out of the labor force altogether. For women, it is almost 200,000 more than that. So over 200,000 women, almost 230,000 women have dropped out of the labor force altogether since just prior to the pandemic. So that's a substantial number. So women, certainly one group, have been disproportionately affected by this pandemic. And you heard earlier, if you were able to tune into the session with some of our other state leaders, we can see that we're working on this, especially when it comes to childcare. You heard Susan mention earlier. Other groups that have been disproportionately affected during this pandemic, people of color. If we look at the unemployment rates, so once we start parsing this stuff up by demographic groups, we have to combine data across multiple time points. So what you're looking at here is an average over the last 12 months. But you can see the unemployment rate for Blacks is well over twice what it is for whites, and it is more than double the overall rate as well. 5.7% unemployment for whites, over 14% for Blacks, Hispanic ethnicity being in between at 8%. We can see an additional story when we look at the duration of unemployment. How long are people out of the labor, looking for a job, can't find one? If we look at that, we can see that it's a little bit higher for Blacks than it is for whites, but substantially higher for Hispanics at almost 37 weeks. So people of color is another group, individuals that have been disproportionately affected throughout this pandemic. And then a third group is those individuals in lower paying industries. So if we take all of our industries here in the state and we were to put them in two groups, those that pay, so $41,000 a year is about the median wage we have here in Michigan. If we were to look at those industries paying above that on average versus those that pay below that, we see two very different stories. So in the chart in front of you, you're looking at a change in the number of payroll jobs, both in the state as well as the U.S. overall. And we can see that certain sectors have been hit much harder than others as far as the decrease in those payroll jobs. So arts, entertainment, and recreation, as well as accommodation and food services, we can see that those are both in the double-digit territory, almost 20% for accommodation and food service, almost 25% for arts, entertainment, and recreation is the decrease we're seeing in payroll jobs since February of 2020. Also see a big hit for other services as well as administrative and wage services. So those sectors paying less than $41,000, we're seeing those larger decrease in payroll jobs. We also see that those decreases are bigger here in Michigan than they are in the U.S. overall. If we look at those that are paying above $41,000, we still see a decrease in those jobs, but we can see that Michigan's doing a bit better than the U.S. overall. And we can also see that that decrease in payroll jobs is much, much smaller. It's under 5%. So a very big divide between those industries that pay less than the median, those that pay above. One other group that I want to bring some attention to before we move on with our presentation is those individuals with lower levels of educational attainment. And this is something that predates the pandemic, of course, but we know that individuals with lower levels of educational attainment have poor labor market outcomes. We can see that the unemployment rate correlates very strongly with education. Those individuals that don't have a high school diploma, if we look over the last year, unemployment rate is over 10%. If we look at those individuals with a bachelor's degree or higher, it's just over 3%. So a big, big difference in those unemployment rates. And we see a similar story play out when it looks at labor force participation. Those individuals with higher levels of educational attainment more likely to participate in the labor force. So we know that educational attainment plays a key role here. Why does this matter? How does educational attainment look across the states? So we can see across the states regions varying levels of educational attainment. And we know, also, if you've heard about other initiatives here at the state, about the 60 by 30 initiative that's going on right now. We can see, Southeast Michigan, we have over 40% of individuals with a associate degree or above. This varies all the way to 28% for Northeast. So big difference in those post-secondary educational attainment levels. Why should we be concerned with this? Well, it matters because of wages, right? 60 by 30 isn't a goal just to be a goal. It's a goal with a purpose, and that is to get our fellow Michiganders, people in our state, out of poverty, right, and into more prosperous outcomes. And so we can see that those areas that have higher levels of educational attainment, they pay higher wages. Almost $22 an hour is the median wage in Metro Detroit. We can see that it's just under $16 an hour in Northeast. We also know that if we look across the state and we look at how do credentials pay off, we can see that there's, again, strong correlation between wages and educational attainment. We see a big bump, right? If you go from a high school diploma to any kind of post-secondary education, a certificate, for instance, right, a big, big bump in what those annual wages look like. Continues to go up with an associate degree, a bachelor's degree, and those payoffs can only get greater as we look further down the line from 1 year after we complete that credential to a full 5 years after we complete that credential. So as far as the employment outcomes of our people in our state, educational attainment plays a key role, and also poverty, right? We know that in Michigan Works, that's a big goal for all of us, is trying to get individuals out of poverty, get them above that Alice line. And we can see that if individuals with a bachelor's degree, again, poverty is below 4%. Those with some kind of post-secondary credential, it's under 10%. But if we look at individuals that don't have a diploma, then it's over 25%. So big differences there. So to conclude really quick, before I go ahead and turn it over to Lalia, so the labor market in Michigan, we've seen market improvement over the last 12 months or so, but we're not quite back to where we were pre-pandemic, but we're getting close. Multiple groups have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic over the last year, especially women, people of color, individuals working in lower paying industries, and those with lower levels of educational attainment. And we know that educational attainment plays a critical role in improving prosperity of our Michigan residents. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen. So that's the labor market update for now. And I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Lilia, and she can tell you about some of our new data and our new products related to projections.
Hi, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yep.
We can, yep.
We just heard Scott talk about the labor market, and I'm here to talk more about the projection-based products and share some highlights from our career outlooks. While I'll be focusing on projection-based products, I'll talk about how we produced our lists of top occupations before diving deeper into the details of our regional outlooks and highlighting some of our available resources. But to start with, I'll provide a brief overview of our regional projections. So in terms of regional projections, we see here statewide 2018 to 2028 data published last summer projected a 10-year change of 0.1%. Total employment in all regions is expected to follow suit. Only West Michigan is expected to grow greater than 2% change, positive or negative. It's important to keep in mind that although about half of these regions are projected to contract slightly in total employment, a change of just 2% or less over a 10-year period is essentially flat. This is largely a demographic story. Unless we have people to fill those jobs, we can't grow the labor market. And we just heard Scott talk quite a bit about the importance of educational attainment. Unemployment correlates very highly with levels of education as well as wages. Higher levels of education have the highest growth rates. So jobs requiring a bachelor's degree or more are expected to grow at the highest rate of all education groups in all regions. Occupations that require an associate's degree, post-secondary award, or some college are expected to be the second fastest growing education group. However, it's not just about growth rate, it's also about annual openings. So for annual openings, we can see that most are those that do not require post-secondary. Still, bachelor's or higher post-secondary education account for the second highest share of job openings. Now that's the big picture of what we're projecting. Now I'll explain how this informs our career outlooks and how we generate our lists of occupations for each prosperity region. So using our projections data, which is based on openings, growth, and median wage, we produce these two key products. Our Hot 50 identify the top 50 jobs for the state through 2028. Additionally, we have the career outlooks. This identifies top jobs by education and training requirements. On even number years, we release these statewide products. On years we don't produce statewide products, we offer sub-regional breakdown of our top occupations. So every other year we switch from statewide to region career outlooks. This year our regional outlooks offer a sub-region breakdown of the Hot 50 into 20 occupations, again based on training and education. We provide a unique regional career outlook brochure for each of our 10 prosperity regions. But before we dive into the details, I'll take a minute to explain how we create these lists. Our methodology relies heavily on openings. So exit openings reflect retirement or those who have just left. Transfer openings represent those openings created from people who've changed occupations. Change openings are a product of growth as the state has additional openings, and the growth rate is the extent to which we're expected to actually grow. The most important thing here is that we're looking at job openings. Median wage provides a range of wages for each occupation, so most of the job holders make somewhere between the ranges. Some considerations: one important differentiation is that our regional outlooks offer a list of jobs that include only high demand jobs, while other regional lists break down high wage and high demand jobs based on on education. Most lists use a wage floor to ensure that we are listing good paying jobs. The exception is the high school or short-term training. The base employment is set for the region, and in this case, that's 2018. This is the annual employment value for 2018 and launching point for our projections. Now, negative growth, even occupations that we expect to contract, can offer sufficient levels of openings in the projection period. Just because it's negative doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities for entrance. So keep in mind, this is over 10 years. And again, we release these regional outlooks every other year and statewide outlooks on even years, so we can look a bit more closely at the regional outlooks and what exactly is inside these brochures. So each panel represents different levels or tiers of education or training, or time for training. Our post-secondary certificate or moderate training is 1 to 12 months. Apprenticeship or long-term training are those that require more than 12 months training. And lastly, associate's degree, or I'm sorry, more than 12 months training or associate's degree. Lastly, bachelor's degree or higher account for the 4-year education. So moving from left to right, for each of these panels, you can see that we've listed the top 20 jobs alphabeticalized. We include annual openings, growth percent, and wage range. Each region has its own brochure. Next, we'll look at high school diploma or short term. These are less than 1 month. So 4 of the 5 lists are broken down to demonstrate that there are opportunities across educational levels. However, our workforce development partners find it especially important to see which jobs allow for quick entry. This removes the education barriers to access. In other words, some job seekers might find it more interesting in finding a job quickly and might not have the training that require in some of the other panels. High demand jobs differ in that we don't include the high wage criteria or the median regional wage for about occupations. When we include the wage threshold for the region, many of these jobs would be missed. There are fewer of these jobs that make the regional median. And then lastly, our last panel is science, that our STEM careers being especially lucrative for job seekers. So some of the highlights here, 23 of our occupations are listed in all 10 prosperity regions, suggesting these 23 occupations are in high demand across all the regions, while 64 occupations are listed in only one region, suggesting regional differences. 19% of the occupations are professional trades, and this suggests that quality jobs are not exclusive to jobs with higher education requirements. Detroit has 78% is the most similar statewide, while Northeast Michigan at 46% is the least similar statewide. And across these regions, we looked at the top jobs for each based on education and training requirements. For the top jobs in that region, this shows the distribution of education levels needed for the top 50 occupations for each region. When looking at the most highly ranked occupation in each region, they tend to require higher levels of education and training. So for example, looking at the percent of top jobs requiring a bachelor's or higher varies from 50% in the East region to nearly 80% in the Southeast. And then here we see a list of those jobs that are common across all 10 regions. This suggests that these jobs have the added value of regional mobility. Not surprisingly, the jobs we see here tend to show up on the Hot 50. We can see the list for bachelor's or higher has the highest number of jobs, followed by associates and long-term training category. We can see there are also a number of occupations requiring less training and education and valuable across the state. These include things like heavy tractor, trailer, and truck drivers, operating engineers, sales reps, and for high school diploma or short-term training, food prep and service workers, construction laborers, home health aides as examples. But some jobs appear on fewer lists, and this illustrates regional uniqueness. This is what makes career outlooks so valuable. Over 56% of occupations featured appear in 3 or less prosperity regions, Over 125 occupations appear in 3 or less prosperity regions. Although regions have some overlap, our career outlooks also show the uniqueness of each part of the state, as we'll see in the next slides. So to give you a sense of the unique character across our subregions, this is a sampling of jobs unique to the listed region. So furniture makers in the West or chemical production has a large role in the East Central labor market. And of course, Lansing insurance companies in the South Central region. And here we can see how unique occupations are distributed across regions. This varies from as many as 17 unique occupations in the Northeast to 4 in the East. But some occupations entirely miss the list, and this is due to low wages. One of the last things we want to talk about is that some occupations are in demand, but they don't pay enough to make these high wage and high demand lists. So as you can see here from one example region, TAs, cooks, and MAs are in demand, but they don't show up on the region's list due to paying less than the regional median wage. Some occupations miss the list due to their low wages, and this is illustrated in this chart where we see dark green is above the regional median wage and light green is below. The big takeaway here is those green occupations are high demand, but they aren't on the list because they just don't make enough. So which occupations are most frequently left off our career outlooks as a result of low wages? Here they are. We've got cooks, medical secretaries, maintenance and repair workers. Looking across regions, these jobs stand out because they missed so many lists. This is especially true in regions with higher wages. So some of our key takeaways here, the data through 2028, there are a number of resources available. Our career outlooks are available for every region in the state. A number of these jobs are in demand across the state, but many are also critical within their locality rather than across regions. Multiple high demand jobs require that they are not highlighted in the career outlooks. This is as a result of lower wages. So if you want to learn more, you can look at our website or sign up for email notifications from us through GovDelivery. And here we've got our Twitter handle as well as the website.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much, Leah, for all that great information. As Holly said when we started, we'll go ahead. If anybody has any questions, we'll go ahead and tackle those at the end when everybody's done presenting. But I think so for now, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Nick, and let's hear about the new apprenticeship dashboard.
Thanks. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see this all right?
We can.
All right, perfect. My name is Nick Gandhi again. I'm an economic analyst with the Bureau. So I'm going to be giving an overview of the Michigan Registered Apprenticeship Dashboard. So first off, I just want to show you where you can find it. I believe my colleague Evan Linsky should be throwing in the chat some web links as well. But the first is just michigan.gov/apprenticeship right here. So it'll take you to this website right here. And if you scroll down, you'll see a bunch of great resources, but then you'll see a Michigan Apprenticeship Dashboard with a little like sneak preview into it. You can also visit our website, which Lilia put on her slides, which is just michigan.gov/LMI or milmi.org. And you can click on our data tools section, data search, and then we have a little apprenticeship drop down right here. But I'm just going to go through the apprenticeship website. So if you click here, it'll take you to our dashboard. So this is the home screen. So before we get into this, a little bit about the dashboard. So this was built in partnership with the Bureau of Labor and Economic Opportunity. It's funded through a grant received by the U.S. Employment and Training Administration, I believe. And so, so this is also based off of a report we produced in 2019, which is titled The State of Registered Apprenticeships in Michigan. This is that report here. It's also on our website, and we have a link to it in the dashboard as well, which I'll show you later. But so this report was based off, it was pretty much an update on just the state of registered apprenticeship in Michigan. So an overview of active apprentices, new and completer for apprentices. We also had demographic information, breakdown by industry and occupation, and then a new thing in this report. So we previously released this report in 2015, but in this 2019 report, we added in the use of administrative wage record data. And the idea behind this was to be able to see, okay, so we know apprentices are supposed to earn more wages throughout their apprentice, but what happens after they complete an apprentice? Like, how much are they earning? So using this administrative wage record data, we were able to track or see, like 1 year after an apprentice completed their apprenticeship, we could see how much they were earning. So and our apprenticeship data comes from Rapid. So Michigan is a Rapid state. So we are able to use apprenticeship data from that resource. So into the dashboard, what we see here is our landing page or our home page. Not sure how many folks have seen the dashboard before. If you have, it may look completely different in this demonstration that I'm going to be giving. We just released a new update on Friday afternoon, giving it a new facelift and adding in some new cool features. So this is the homepage, and we have interactive statewide data, some interactive regional data. We'll get into some occupational data. And then we have a couple different links down here. So one includes some methodology, explaining some of the terminology and data that goes into the dashboard. We have some product statement explaining our partnership, which goes into the dashboard, and then a link to get back to the michigan.gov/apprenticeship website. So getting into the report or to the dashboard, I'm going to start with looking at our interactive statewide data. So I'm just going to click here. So when you get to this, this is the statewide registered apprenticeship dashboard. Before I get into the data, just some navigation. We have a home button and a back button at the top. So the home button will take you back to the home page, and then the back button will take you back to the previous page which you were on. But we can see here, so this is our statewide data. All our data in our dashboard is updated through 2019. So it'll have a note on all pages explaining when data was updated for when you use it in the future. But we can see that in 2019, Michigan had just over 19,700 active apprentices, and they were just under 1,200 active programs. Among these apprentices, most of these are in traditional apprenticeships, which include construction and manufacturing. We also have a segment in retail trade and utilities, as well as healthcare and social assistance. So this tab on the right shows, the active apprentices by industry and occupation. We have filters here. So currently it's showing industries. If you're familiar with NAICS codes, these are 2-digit industry codes and titles here. We can also filter by occupation if we click here. And if you're familiar with SOC codes, these are 6-digit SOC code and titles here. On the left here, we can also see completers and new apprentices by year. The data goes back until 2008, and it runs all the way until 2019. But we can also filter by new apprentices. So we can see in like 2018, we had just over 7,500 new apprentices across the state. For completers, we see the data usually lags behind a couple years. So we can see a max completers here was just under 2,400. And then at the bottom, we have a share of active apprentices by different demographic groups. So one is women. So 10.9% of all active apprentices in Michigan in 2019 were women. 6.1% were veterans. 12.4% were people of color, and then 0.7% were those who were between the ages of 16 and 18 years old. Now, when I clicked on this, I did say interactive data. So if you're interested in certain industries or occupations, we can actually click into this table here and get more detailed data. So if we clicked on, say, electricians, you're going to see that all of these metrics updated to provide data on just electricians. So we can see that just over 4,000 apprentices were electricians across the state in 2019, and they were in 320 different active programs. For completers, we can see that like in 2017, we had 345 electrician completers. We can also filter by new apprentices. And also in 2017, we also had just under 1,300 new electrician apprentices. At the bottom here, we also see that this updated. So only 4.2% of electricians were women, 7.5% of veterans, of electricians were veterans, and so on and so forth. So this is a really cool tool. We can also look at like operating engineers, which I know is a occupation which has had some push to increase like representation among different demographic groups. We can see like 12.2% of these operating engineers across the state were women, 10.9% were people of color, 7.6% were veterans. And we can also see that in 2017, there were 145 new apprentices for this occupation. We can also filter by industry up here. Also, I know I clicked on here, I clicked off. If you click on industry, it'll show blank, but it's not broken, I promise. But we can also click on construction again here, and then we can get the same type of data just for industries. So we can see 3.7% of construction apprentices were women, 12.9% were people of color. We can look at other industries, which like healthcare and social assistance, and we can see 81% were women, 4.4% were people of color, and whatnot. But so this is a really cool tool. You can look at any industry or occupation that you may be interested in, or just get like a general sense of what's going on in the state. So that's the statewide data. I'm going to go back now to the home page. So I'm going to click this home button up here. And next I'm going to be talking about our regional interactive data. So I'm just going to click here. And when you click on the regional data, it takes you to a separate landing page where you can choose which region of the state you are most interested in. So the way we regionalize the data, I'm sure many folks are familiar with prosperity regions in the state. So this is how our data is broken down. So we have a map on the right here, which is a map of our 10 prosperity regions, and you can click on it for your specific region. Or you can also click on one of these buttons here on the left. So with the regional data, the dashboard itself is going to look a lot like the statewide data. So just for example, I'm going to click on, let's do West Michigan. And what we see here is, so it'll update just for West Michigan data, registered apprenticeship data. And so when we do regional data, we define it in our state of registered apprenticeships in Michigan report. We defined regional apprentices as based upon where apprentices were living. And that's what we initially did with this dashboard. However, through many conversations we had, we've decided to change our methodology a little bit to determine registered regional apprentices, and now we are basing it off of the programs in the region. So where the programs are based off of. So what that means is that for West Michigan, there were just over 2,900 active apprentices that were in the 290 active programs in West Michigan. So they could be living outside of West Michigan, but they are enrolled in apprenticeship programs that are located in West Michigan. But we can see here is we get much of the same data as what we saw in the statewide data. So we have active apprentices by industry and occupation. So we can see electricians were the largest group of active apprentices in West Michigan. In the industry side, we can see the traditional industries of construction and manufacturing were among the top. Here, we can also look at new apprentices and completers. For total, we can see 3.4% of active apprentices in West Michigan were women, 6.1% were veterans, 5.5% people of color, 0.8% were youth. And we can also look into these fields as well. So if you click on construction here, all these data fields will update. So like 1.2% were women in construction and whatnot. So that's West Michigan. I'll just show another region. So I click that black button to get to this page so I can show like Detroit Metro. We had just under 8,000 active apprentices that were attending just over 180 programs in the region. And again, we can see construction and manufacturing were among the top industries in the region. When we're looking at occupations, we see electricians and carpenters were the two top occupations in Detroit metro region. And 18.1% of active apprentices in Detroit metro were people of color, 13% were women, 6.5% were veterans. And we can also look again at new apprentices and completers. So for example, like electricians, we can see in Detroit metro, there were 381 new apprentices that were electricians in 2017. But that's our regional data. We have it for every region. Some regions may be smaller than others, like the Upper Peninsula will have fewer active apprentices and whatnot. But so that's our regional data, very similar to our statewide data tab. But yeah, so the last page I really want to highlight is our occupational data. So this is going back to the home screen. We can click on our occupational data here. And this page looks a little bit different than our other two, just because it's mainly just focused on occupations. So we can see these are all our SOC 6-digit occupations here. And we have it defaulted to construction laborers just because it's one of the larger occupations for apprentices. And one thing to note about this data here is that this is all statewide data. It is not regionalized. But so we get some of the same data points. We see number of active apprentices for an occupation. We can sort by the number of new apprentices and completers across the state. But the key part here is the occupational wage data and then the completion rates. So this occupational wage data has 3 different fields, which you see here. This is kind of like what I alluded to earlier with what was new with our apprenticeship report in 2019 was the introduction of real wage data. So this dark green bar here is a 1 year after wage for construction laborers across Michigan. So what this is so this data was updated in 2019. So we took 2018 apprenticeship completers that completed an apprenticeship as a construction laborer. We looked 4 quarters after they completed an apprenticeship to see how much they were earning. Now, it may not necessarily be that they were working as a construction laborer. We just know that they were earning wages after completing an apprenticeship as a construction laborer. And To be able to display data here, the occupation had to have 10 or more observations of completers that were earning wages. So now we know kind of like what this wage is. So we can see that a median hourly wage for somebody for a 2018 completer as a construction laborer, they were earning $19.69 on the hour. Comparatively, so this lime green bar here is an occupation starting wage for the state of Michigan. So this means that this comes from our Occupational Employment Wage Statistics Program. And this is a 25th percentile wage for the occupation. And we use 25th percentile wage just as a proxy for a starting wage. And so we can see for construction laborers that this proxy for a starting wage across the state was $15.47 an hour. So about $4 fewer an hour than those who complete an apprenticeship. This light green bar here is an all occupation starting wage. So this is for all occupations across Michigan. What is the 25th percentile wage? And so we can see that for all occupations is $13.60 an hour. And this light green bar is not going to change for all the occupations just because it's an all occupation starting wage. So we can see construction laborers earned about $6 more per hour than that all occupation starting wage. We can also look at other occupations. However, keep in mind that not every occupation will be able to, we will be able to display this dark green bar just because of data suppression. So we can look at carpenters here. I'll try to find one more which has a dark green bar. So for electricians, here we can see that their 1 year after wage was $36.30 on the median per hour, which was significantly higher than the occupational starting wage or 25th percentile wage for the occupation, which was $21.39 an hour. And then again, significantly more than that all occupation starting wage of $13.60. The last thing I really want to show you is this completion rate. So at the bottom here, we can see it displays a completion rate of 49.5% for electricians. And what this is we look at if an apprentice completes within their expected time frame, then we count them as a completer on time. So for example, we look at apprentices who are in a 4-year program if they complete it on time. But when we do this, we give a 50% buffer to that program. So if an apprentice enrolls in a 4-year program, we give them 6 years to complete that. So for example, like in this completion rate, the most recent, since this was updated in 2019, the most recent year where somebody who was in a 4-year program could have enrolled was 2013, because it would give them that 6 years to complete. So if they were enrolled in 2013 and if they enrolled in 2013 in a 4-year program and they completed by the end of 2019, they were included in this data here, or as a completer here. So we can see 49.5% of these electricians completed on time. And this dark green hash is for all occupations. So we can see for all occupations in the state, there's a 43.4% completion rate. So that's the occupational data. I think I'll stop there. If you're interested about some more methodology, you can click on our methodology section as well. But I'll throw it back to Scott. Stop sharing.
We do have a couple of questions here for you all, specifically for Nicholas. And I think you might have kind of delved into some of the answers here a little bit, but we'll read through these and see where it goes. So the first one is, are these only DOL approved apprenticeships?
Yeah, so these are only include apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships. So I know, like in our report, we make sure to state that there could be more apprenticeships out there, but these are only ones which we receive that are approved by the Department of Labor.
Okay. And then, does the dashboard include data for those who dropped out of an apprenticeship training before earning their credentials?
Okay, so I know we have, I know the 1 year after wage, it only includes those who completed an apprenticeship program, but I know our completion rate, it will show if they completed on time. And it looks like David, I know in the chat, says it looks like that completed or answered his question, possibly.
Terrific. And then, does it include current employers or businesses with apprenticeships, what they are and what school they work with? That must be related technical instruction question there.
We do not have like business names or like what schools they're associated with, like in our published data. I know, but we don't publish that. I don't know if Scott, you can maybe allude to that.
Yeah, we can jump in on that one, Nick. So, I mean, the short answer to your question, Kristen, is no, but we are working with the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity to build something out that would do precisely that. So this dashboard that Nick presented today is meant to do a number of things of which, he just went over, but as far as an interface to be able to search for programs themselves, that's not what the intent of this dashboard is, but that is something that we're looking at working on over the course of the next year.
Patricia says she thinks this presentation was excellent. Is the recording going to be available and the slides? Yes, on the Michigan Works Association website, everyone, you'll be able to access the presentations that you attended and the others that you weren't able to. And I'm sure they'll get that all loaded up relatively soon. Then a few comments have come in. One just came in: as a member of IBEW, our apprenticeship completion rate is far higher than 45%.
Yeah, I know, like with our completion rate, I know it's just, we had like our own methodology, which we use to determine that. But so may vary a little bit. But.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, if you think that's wrong for some reason, you can feel free to reach out to us, send us a note, and we can double check that. But I mean, that with some of the larger trade occupations, plumbers being another one, I know, especially once we get to looking from beginning to end, there's just a lot of attrition in those programs as things get more challenging, especially with math, things like that. I know I've had conversations with apprenticeship groups on this in the past, but if you think there's something that we need to take a look at, we're happy to do that. Always want to make sure the data is of the highest quality.
In the questions and answers tab, we were asked, where do we find the hot jobs and career outlook pamphlets so we can print and hand it out? Can I say a couple words about that? We've gotten some really great help from your department, and we've been emailed documents that are, professional printer ready, with the outlines and things that you need to have them printed. We're currently having our own printed. I think that's the hope and the wish now from your department, is that as we need them, we kind of take that on a little bit.
Yeah, so that's right. So thank you, Holly, for mentioning that. Yeah, so we've got a limited number that we can print on our own at this point. So, but we are happy to share those print quality files if you're interested. So there's a contact form on our website, michigan.gov/LMI, and then you can feel free to use that and reach out to us, and yeah, we can get you those print quality files.
Okay. So lots of good feedback in the chat here for you all, and I will extend compliments like I always do to your department. I think you guys do some excellent work. All these were some great examples of just some of the work that you guys do there. I work closely with our regional representative, Leo Murambaya, and he's just terrific and super attentive to our needs and quick to reply. And we really appreciate all the work that you do. And we've sent some people through your DSP training, which is also a really high quality product that's available to us at our local Michigan Works agency. So thank you. And another quick question, when will 2020 data be posted?
We're currently planning to at least release 2020 data in a report, which will be coming out in November. But yeah, so we'll likely release a report first and then update the dashboard.
Great. Okay, well, thank you again for your participation today, everybody, and thank you for the presenters. And just last quick reminder, I should stick the survey link in here one more time. I think it's lost. There we go. So please complete the survey and do some networking and visit the exhibitors. So thanks and enjoy the rest of the conference today, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Yeah.